The red dust of western Kansas never truly settled, like an ancient spirit of the land, forever swirling in the air, staining everything it touched. It wasn't just fine particles of earth carried by the wind, but a silent witness to shattered dreams and burgeoning hopes, of blood and sweat, of life and death. Its scent was acrid in the nostrils, clinging to every fiber of clothing, seeping into every crevice, and etching itself onto every soul. Each morning, the sun rose like a scorching copper disk, bringing not freshness but a stark reminder of another day of searing heat in parched earth. The prairie wind ripped through every brittle buffalo grass blade, carrying a suffocating heat as if blown from a colossal furnace, mingled with the smell of cracked dry earth and wild sagebrush. Like the whispered tales of the past, the sighs of those who had fallen, and the echoes of unfulfilled desires. In the summer of 1879, a scorching heat descended upon the vast prairie, turning it into a sea of withered gold. Arid as far as the eye could see, people said these were fire thorns from the hand of God, piercing deep into the earth, into the very fibers of plant life, and into the hearts of the people struggling to survive here. It was a summer of ultimate trial, where every breath was a ceaseless battle, every step leaving its mark on nature's relentless harshness. Winters, in contrast, brought fierce blizzards, solitary and bone-chillingly cold, transforming the prairie into a deadly white expanse, where every exhaled breath turned to white wisps and vanished into the void. Spring offered only fragile hope before sudden thunderstorms, roaring across the sky like an enraged deity. And autumn heralded another long winter, with bitter winds cutting through every withered leaf. Life here was a ceaseless cycle of struggle, where humans and nature coexisted, sometimes in harmony, sometimes in brutal conflict, in an eternal battle for survival. Gaunt prairie cattle desperately sought rare patches of grass. Hardy cacti thrust upwards with sharp thorns, and wild animals struggled to endure the harsh conditions, every cry of theirs a primal instinct. On Clayton's Mound, a solitary rise standing tall amidst the seemingly endless sea of grass, William Mercer reined in his black horse, the horse Mercer-Cimarron, with its coat as dark as a starless night and a long, flowing mane, stood silently, only the soft snort of its breath breaking the immense stillness. William, with his sturdy build, shoulders as broad as an oak plank that had weathered countless seasons of rain and sun, was a living embodiment of the resilience this land demanded of every individual. His gray eyes, Isernester Tunrainawans, narrowed beneath the faded brim of his weathered Stetson, bore the deep marks of an indelible pain, the unjust 44 rimfire bullet that had claimed his younger brother. Tom Chertomanure. William had been here, on this very land, since he was a boy. He and Tom, the Mercer brothers, grew up with the sound of the wind and the scent of wild grass. They climbed this very Clayton's Mound together, where the wind whistled through their ears like ancient stories, dreaming of a thriving Mercer ranch, where cattle stretched to the horizon and their laughter echoed across the valley. Tom wasn't just his brother, he was his confidant. Half of William's dream, the innocent light in an already harsh life. He remembered Tom's honest smile, the boys' tuneless humming as they worked the fields together, the times they'd sneak molasses candy from their father's kitchen and share it beneath the old oak tree. William could still feel the burning sensation of Tom's hand in his last grip, his brother's final breath escaping amidst the resounding gunshots. But it had all vanished on that fateful day, when Tom was shot during a skirmish with ruthless cattle rustlers from the Crimson Scars gang, a brutal outfit that plagued the frontier. William tried to save him, holding Tom in his arms as the boy's life ebbed away, his brother's blood soaking his hands, hot and agonizing. That secret remorse gnawed at him every day, hardening him, making him taciturn and burdening him with a heavy sense of responsibility. He lived with the haunting memory of that day, of the moment he failed to protect his only brother. He threw himself into work as a way to escape the pain, to forget the loss, to build Mercer Ranch into an impregnable fortress, so that no one else would suffer such a loss. Every hoofbeat resounding on the dry earth hammered at the silent, unspoken pain in his heart, a mournful, lingering rhythm echoing in the vast expanse, blending with the whistling wind in his ears, carrying his own quiet sighs. He had watched the land change, little by little, through each season, each year, from a wild prairie to a land of broken dreams. And he had also watched it claim those he held dearest, Tom's death wasn't just a personal loss, it was a scar etched onto the soul of the ranch, a harsh reminder of the unpredictable cruelty of the Wild West. William tightened his reins, feeling the callous leather beneath his rough fingers. He knew he had to go on, not just for himself but for Tom's legacy, for the future of Mercer Ranch. He was its guardian, its bearer of burdens, and that weight pressed heavily on his shoulders. Yet it also forged him, making him tougher. William wanted more resilient, but deep within lay a heart that yearned for something. A frontier for peace, for me, for healing. The twilight glow stained the sky crimson, turning the clouds into glowing embers. As the Anasasonoid Serpomonsoin N. Sum F. Atchison, Topeka and Santa Fe train slowly pulled its heavy steel wheels, letting out a mournful whistle as it approached Dodge Station. The shrill train whistle tore through the still evening air, signaling the arrival of another world. A world of fragile hopes and ultimate despair, of unexpected reunions and eternal partings. The pungent smell of coal smoke mingled with the damp, musty odor of the old train cars, intensifying the suffocating atmosphere. In the cramped, third-class compartment, thick with the smell of coal smoke, sweat, and dust, Clara Blake felt her bones ache after the long, arduous journey from Texas. This young woman carried not only the grief of her shattered family, but also the enormous bank debt threatening to swallow everything she had ever known, ever held. Her family had once been educated and virtuous farmers in the small town of Elmwood. Her mother was a wise woman, who had served as the unofficial village nurse, teaching Clara about folk medicine, caring for the sick, and managing a household. Her father was passionate about geology, often telling her about underground springs and how to read rock formations, and his belief in nature's hidden riches. Tragedy struck when a sudden yellow fever epidemic claimed her parents within a short time, leaving behind an enormous debt from loans taken to treat their illness and maintain their small farm. The local bank, colluding with the ruthless land agent Silas Blackwood, sought to foreclose on her inheritance. The fear of losing everything, the helplessness of watching her family's assets vanish, compelled Clara to seek an escape, even if it meant traveling to the most unfamiliar place, where she knew no one. She carried not only her meager possessions, but also the haunting specter of bankruptcy and loss, a deep-seated fear that compelled her to always strive for self-reliance. Akuruam, Kleka, with her chestnut hair neatly tied back, a few stubborn wisps falling onto her sweat-dampened forehead, and amber eyes holding astonishing determination, shoved her worn canvas valise onto the dusty platform. Black coal smoke from the locomotive mixed with the red Kansas dust, coating her simple dress, but it couldn't dim the bright light in her eyes. Those eyes, though tired, though filled with sorrow, still radiated a tenacious will, a refusal to succumb to the cruel fate attempting to drown her. She had come to Dodge City, a harsh frontier town where dreams were born and died every day, where loss sometimes felt like a vague concept, to seek an opportunity, a fragile glimmer of hope for a new beginning. As Clara looked up, her gaze inadvertently met William Mercer's. He sat astride his horse, his figure solid as a stone, his faded Stetson slightly obscuring his deep gray eyes. The world around Clara seemed to hold its breath. The train whistle, the commotion of the crowd, everything seemed to vanish into thin air, leaving only the exchange of their gazes in the chaotic space. In that moment, time seemed to stand still, leaving only two individuals, two lost souls in the vast West, finding each other in an unspoken, destined moment. Gay William Inan Mercer-Cimarron, with his weathered, sun-baked but authoritative appearance, seemed to have found an ally, a missing piece in the puzzle of his life. He saw in her a resilience hidden beneath her exhaustion, a spark of hope in those eyes, unlike the resignation or weakness he often saw in other frontier women. Clara in that instant, felt a strange connection, a sense of steadiness and reliability in this man, and a feeling that her life was about to take an entirely new turn, a path she had never considered. She thought to herself, this man might be my only way out. This wasn't just a chance encounter, it was fate's design. The beginning of a story the red dust of Kansas would forever tell. An epic of perseverance and love. No words could adequately describe that evening in the old, rickety Railman's Rest Tavern. where flickering oil lamps cast dancing shadows on the worn wooden walls, creating dim, shifting patterns of light and dark. The air in the tavern was thick with the scent of strong liquor, tobacco, and dust, mingled with the loud chatter and boisterous laughter of cowboys. But to Clara, that smell held something real, something raw, true to the West she had just entered, a place that hid no stark truths. On the heavy oak table, scarred by time, lay a smudged letter of introduction from a lawyer and a blank marriage certificate, its ink stained by dust from the road, lying side by side like two pieces of a fateful puzzle they were about to solve. William Mercer, 29, with a serious expression and probing eyes, fixed his gaze on Clara, proposing a contract devoid of affection, purely legal. His voice was deep and steady, without a hint of superfluous emotion, but every word he spoke carried weight. He stated plainly that this was a purely business arrangement, with no room for romantic sentiment. He needed a skilled financial manager to revitalize the ranch after Tom's death and the financial difficulties burdening Mercer Ranch. He'd heard of Clara's managing abilities from a friend in Texas, and he believed she could fill the void Tom left. He would provide financial sponsorship for Clara, taking on the burden of her debts like a stone lifted from her shoulders, in exchange for her keeping the books and managing Mercer Ranch. It was a cold, practical offer, on a universally utterly devoid of romance. Yet it carried the weight of survival for Clara. The contract, a thin sheet of paper, written on parchment, was exchanged for the iron will of a Westerner, an unbreakable promise, a commitment sealed by honor and life. Clara looked into William's eyes, trying to gauge the man before her. He didn't speak much, but every word he uttered carried the weight of a stone. She knew this was her only chance. A final door opening when all others had slammed shut mercilessly in her face. She wasn't seeking love. Not at this moment. Her heart carried too many scars and burdens from her family's tragedy. She sought survival, a roof over her head, an opportunity to stand on her own 2 feet without owing anyone, to escape the shadow of bankruptcy that always loomed. And William Mercer, with his cold, distant exterior yet harboring undeniable integrity, seemed to be the only one who could provide that. A way out of utter despair, she told herself, "This is just a contract. I will work hard, pay off my debts, and then I will be free." The atmosphere in the Railman's Rest Tavern was somber, heavy with contemplation and momentous decisions. The oil lamp flickered, swaying like a candle in the wind, reflecting the precariousness of life on the frontier, where one's fate could change in an instant. The wind whistled through the gaps in the old wooden door, howling eerie sounds, like a tacit vow from the land, from the destiny awaiting them, inextricably woven into their own fates. Clara took a deep breath. The smell of damp earth and decaying wood filled her lungs, bringing with it the sensation of a new beginning. She nodded, a decisive, unwavering nod, accepting William's offer. From that moment, her life and his would be tied to Mercer Ranch, to the red dust of Kansas, and to the challenges that lay ahead. It was a beginning without love, yet with an unspoken trust, a mutual respect for each other's unwavering will, a seed for something greater. Early one morning on Mercer Ranch, the rich, dark aroma of Mexican coffee mingled with the smoky scent of pine wood burning in the fireplace, blending with the early morning mist and the damp earth. It was the smell of a beginning, of a new day in a harsh but promising land, a rare warmth in the crisp morning air. I was Clara. Now the true manager of the ranch, awoke even before the sun, her spirit ready to face any challenge this land might throw at her. She was no longer the lost Texas girl on the Dodge Station platform. She was part of Mercer Ranch, part of the Mercer family, even if this relationship was based only on a paper contract. The feeling of belonging slowly growing within her. She personally prepared each bushel of roasted corn, the kernels crackling in the cast iron pan, for the thirsty longhorn herd. The cattle, with their long, sweeping horns, were the lifeblood of the ranch, its most valuable asset, and caring for them required meticulous attention, a deep understanding of the animals, and immense patience. Clara, though never having performed this work professionally before, quickly adapted with the instinct of a girl born and raised on a farm. She observed, learned from old Gus and the other cowboys, and worked tirelessly, proving her worth not just with dry numbers in ledgers, but with her own hands and quick mind. She discovered many errors in the old ledgers due to the lack of a professional manager and quickly corrected them, finding ways to optimize the ranch's meager resources. Sometimes, she would even brew extra coffee and bring hot bread to the poor tenant families nearby, who were also struggling to survive. Clara's kindness, etim, though small, silently spread. On a nearby knoll, old Gus, the grizzled foreman who had been with Mercer Ranch since its wild early days, nodded approvingly. Initially, he'd been somewhat skeptical about a city girl's ability to manage a ranch, even muttering about weak women. But as he witnessed Clara's intelligence, diligence, and compassionate heart, the way she wasn't afraid to get her hands dirty to save a weak calf, he gradually accepted and grew fond of her. He shared his hard-earned wisdom about the land, how to read nature's signs, about the brutal winters and parched summers. That Texas girl counts corn faster than the prairie wind, he said, his voice gruff but full of satisfaction, his eyes gleaming with affection. It was a rare compliment from old Gus, a man of few words, difficult in season. That compliment was a formal recognition, a warm ray of sunshine warming Clara's heart amidst the harshness and solitude of the West. She felt a quiet, simple joy. William led his band of cowboys to the corrals. They were a rough, dusty but loyal group, each unique yet bound to the ranch like blood, an inseparable part of themselves. There was Red, Sir Tinturn, the red-bearded man, gruff and abrupt, who initially made crude jokes with Clara, calling her Texas Belle, but who had a heart of gold, always ready to help when needed. There was Silas, who loved his harmonica, always carrying his small instrument and playing mournful but deeply emotional tunes, like the very soul of this land. Sometimes he played gentle melodies that eased the tense atmosphere. And Jude Connolly, a Confederate veteran with a contemplative gaze, always exuding an air of mystery and possessing deadly accurate shooting skills. He was a reliable man, the quietest but most astute observer, often shadowing Clara from a distance to ensure her safety, though he never said a word. They were men of the West, accustomed to harsh living, incessant battles for survival, and unspoken sorrows. For the first time, Clara smiled at their proud glances and the clinking of their spoons, echoing like a sandstorm symphony, a raw yet vibrant sound. It wasn't a forced or polite smile, but a genuine one, a smile of acceptance and belonging. She felt a connection with these men, who had endured so many ups and downs, so many dangers with William. They were her family now, a family not by blood but bound by trust, respect, and a common goal. She had found a place to call home. William also began observing Clara more closely. He saw her dedication, intelligence, and kindness, the way she worked tirelessly and how she treated everyone. Her genuine smile made him realize she wasn't just a manager. She was an indispensable part of Mercer Ranch, a faint but warm light in his life. He felt a warmth spreading from her, a strange yet pleasant sensation, as if something was slowly healing his inner wounds. One particularly sweltering afternoon, a new challenge arose. A small but aggressive band of wild mustangs, driven by the relentless heat and thirst, began to encroach upon the ranch's grazing lands, competing with the longhorns for the already scarce grass and water. These were not just any wild horses. They were known for their cunning and speed, led by a magnificent, untamed stallion with a coat the color of burnt umber. William knew they couldn't simply shoot them. It was against his principles. And the Mustangs were a symbol of the wild spirit of the prairie. They're getting bolder, Mercer-Cimarron. Old Gus grumbled, wiping sweat from his brow as he watched the Mustangs from a distance. Soon, they'll be right in the corrals. Red or Mercer-Cimarron, ever the pragmatic one, suggested a roundup. We could try to herd them off, push them further north. It'll be a tough ride, but better than losing our feed. Silas, however, had a different idea. He'd spent many evenings observing the Mustangs, noticing their patterns, their watering holes, Mercer-Cimarron. They're thirsty, just like our cattle, he said, his voice softer than usual. If we can provide them with a dedicated water source, away from our pastures, they might leave our herds alone. Clara and Mercer-Cimarron, listening intently, saw the wisdom in Silas's words. My father always said, understand nature, and she will work with you, not against you. Mom, perhaps we can dig a small, temporary well, Just for them, a little further out, near the old dry creek bed, William, initially skeptical of such a soft approach, considered it. He trusted Silas's instincts with animals, and Clara's logic was sound. They decided to try. It was a grueling task. Red, with his brute strength, helped dig, his muscles straining under the sun. Jude, with his keen eyes, kept watch for any sudden stampedes from the Mustangs, his rifle ready, but only for warning shots. Silas, with his quiet patience, spent hours near the temporary well, leaving out buckets of fresh water, slowly habituating the Mustangs to the new source. It took days of relentless effort, but slowly, the wild horses began to shift their grazing patterns, gravitating towards their own dedicated water source. It was a small victory, but it showed the ranch's ability to adapt and find peaceful solutions, a testament to the combined wisdom of its diverse inhabitants. 2 days later, as the sun climbed high and the air began to grow hot, Clara was pulling out stubborn buffalo grass roots, feeling the calloused earth beneath her rough fingers. Sweat dotted her forehead, but she worked diligently. Suddenly, an idea sparked in her mind, based on her observations in geological books she'd secretly read in William's library, where William kept the geological map he'd spent years drawing. Every line a product of countless sleepless nights and exhausting trips. She looked up, her amber eyes meeting William's, who stood nearby. She quietly declared the need to drill a well 60 feet north of the ranch. William stared in astonishment. He'd kept the geological map he'd researched for years a secret. Every line, every symbol was the fruit of countless sleepless nights. And Clara pinpointing such a precise location, matching his findings down to the centimeter, was unbelievable. It proved Clara wasn't just a skilled bookkeeper, she had a special knack, an extraordinary intuition for this land, as if she and the land shared an invisible connection. William looked at her with entirely new eyes, full of admiration and awe. Without hesitation, William erected a crude wooden blackboard in the middle of the vast field, under the blazing sun. It wasn't just a simple board, it was the first classroom on Mercer Ranch, a shining symbol of hope and the future. A beginning for great things? Initially, the idea of opening a school for frontier children was novel, and not everyone supported it. Some tenants believed children should work in the fields rather than learn, even calling it a city woman's crazy idea. Clara patiently persuaded them, even holding small meetings to explain the benefits of education. White chalk drew the letter A on the blackboard. Clara's stroke soft yet firm. The laughter of young cowhands mingled with Silas's gentle harmonica tune, creating a symphony of life and dreams, of innocence and hope. Clara didn't just bring efficient management, she brought knowledge, bringing a brighter future for the children on the ranch. Children who previously knew only dust and farm work. She welcomed the children of tenants, hunters, and even Pawnee children from the nearby tribe, including a bright girl named Lily, a girl with inquisitive dark eyes, who became the first bridge between the ranch and the tribe. This act sowed seeds of kindness and tolerance in the community, earning her much appreciation. It was a small step, but it held immense significance, affirming Clara's vision and humanity, showing that she cared not just about material things, but about people. The school quickly became a vibrant hub. Old Gus, despite his initial skepticism, found himself drawn to the laughter of the children. He'd often sit on a nearby overturned bucket, whittling small wooden animals for the younger ones, his gruff exterior softening with each tiny smile. He even started telling them stories of the Old West, tales of buffalo hunts and daring adventures, subtly weaving in lessons about courage and perseverance. Red, Pete Woody, surprisingly, discovered a knack for teaching arithmetic, his booming voice making numbers seem less intimidating. He'd draw large, simple equations on a separate slate, patiently guiding the children through additions and subtractions, often rewarding correct answers with a piece of dried jerky. Silas would often play his harmonica during recess, his melodies filling the air, and the children would dance and sing along, their innocent voices a stark contrast to the harshness of the prairie. Jude worry, ever watchful, would stand at the edge of the school grounds, his presence a silent guardian, ensuring the children's safety, his keen eyes scanning the horizon for any potential threats. One afternoon, a small crisis erupted in the makeshift classroom. A young boy named Billy, known for his mischievous streak, accidentally spilled a bottle of ink all over a newly drawn map of Kansas. Panic spread among the children. Clara, instead of scolding, calmly took a rag and began to clean it. Mistakes happen. Billy and Dina Simon, she said gently. The important thing is to learn from them and try to make things right. She then used the opportunity to teach them about the importance of being careful and helping each other. Old Gus, witnessing this, gave a rare, genuine smile. That woman, he muttered to himself. She's got away with folks, big and small. The following weeks, life on Mercer Ranch revolved around the grinding sound of drills biting into limestone, spitting out sparkling black zinc flakes under the harsh, blazing sun. Drilling the well was a ceaseless battle with the parched earth, demanding strength, perseverance, and an intense belief that water would be found. There were times when machinery broke down, or drills snapped, discouraging everyone. But William and Clara always encouraged them. Exhausting night shifts stretched on. Cowboys taking turns working under the dim moonlight and flickering storm lanterns, casting strange shapes on the ground. Sweat soaked their chambray shirts. Dust coated their hair and skin. But no one complained, not a single groan. They knew water was life, the very breath of the ranch. And finding an underground spring would completely change the fate of Mercer Ranch, bringing life to all. William and Clara were often present at the worksite, not just to supervise but to encourage the workers, bringing hot coffee and sincere words of encouragement. They shared simple meals under the lantern light, facing exhaustion and hope together. And their their relationship, initially a dry legal contract, gradually transformed into a harmonious collaboration. An unspoken mutual trust. Clara wasn't just a manager, she was a companion, sharing burdens and grand hopes. William realized she possessed not only a sharp intellect, but also remarkable tenacity, a heart that never gave up in the face of hardship, and a rare dedication. He felt he was no longer as lonely as before, having a woman who understood and stood by him. Then one late September afternoon, as everyone was preparing to end a tiring day of work, the sky suddenly changed color. A fierce dust storm descended, violent and unexpected like a monster from hell. The wind howled at 50 miles per hour, carrying sharp, iron-like grains of sand, stinging the skin, blurring visibility, turning everything into a terrifying orange-brown. The air was thick with dust. Visibility zero. The wind howling like demons. The cries of workers swallowed by the storm. Everyone frantically sought shelter, screaming hysterically. But the storm came too fast, catching everyone off guard. William, seeing a group of workers being swept away, rushed to shield them and vital equipment. But a large timber, torn from the derrick by the wind, struck his shoulder, ripping his dark chambray shirt. Blood quickly spread on the fabric, staining a large patch, forming a throbbing wound. Smoke and dust rose thickly, enveloping everything, transforming the space into a chaotic and horrifying scene. Clara, without hesitation, despite the danger, rushed to William's side. Her heart pounded in her chest, extreme fear overwhelming her as she saw him fall, as if she were losing an important part of her own life. She tore a strip from her sleeve, bandaging his wound hurriedly but carefully, her hands trembling but still steady. She felt the warmth of his blood seeping through the fabric, and a cold dread crept into her heart, a fear she hadn't felt since losing her own family. In that moment, all barriers between them seemed to vanish. She no longer thought of contracts or responsibilities. She only thought of saving this man, who had become a significant part of her life, an indispensable pillar. She used her body to shield him, regardless of her own danger. As the sand grains cut into her skin, the dust storm still roared, like a furious wild beast. But Clara stubbornly held William, shielding him with her body. Her strength slowly ebbed, and finally, she collapsed into the arms of Jude Connolly, who had arrived just in time to help. Jude carried William to safe shelter, while Clara, though exhausted, her entire body aching, still managed to stay conscious, directing everyone, ensuring no one was left behind. When dawn broke, the storm had passed. The sky turned clear blue again, but everything was covered in a thick layer of red dust. Like a funeral shroud, everyone returned to the worksite, exhaustion and injuries evident on their faces. And then one tornado turned to Mercer-Cimarron. A miraculous sound echoed, a sound they had long awaited. A cool stream of water gushed from the earth, erupting powerfully, pattering down like drumbeats, signaling victory, signaling that a miracle had arrived. William, though still in pain from his shoulder wound, stared in awe as he saw the clear water gushing powerfully. His hand trembled as he touched the cool water, feeling life flowing through his fingers. "This water has saved our souls," he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. Not just about the water, but about Clara. Immediately afterward, William also announced that Mercer Ranch would allow neighboring families to take water for free, especially those whose wells had been damaged or run dry after the storm. It wasn't just water, it was hope. It was life. It was the promise of a bright future for Mercer Ranch, a liberation from barrenness and despair, and an act of sowing gratitude in the hearts of the people. Before they could fully celebrate the great victory of finding water, the joy was cut short by an ambush signal at Whitlock Canyon, a narrow and treacherous path often used to move cattle herds. Farnham Land, a tea, a wheat, or meat. A notorious land corporation known for its ruthless and greedy tactics, had unleashed their blackjack crew to ambush Mercer Ranch's longhorn herd. This was a devastating blow, not only aimed at stealing property, but also at destroying the ranch's reputation and morale. Pushing them to the brink of ruin, tar oil fire poured down the rocks, creating burning streams, blocking the escape route for the cattle and cowboys. Spencer rifles flashed wildly in the dust, the shouts of the attackers mingling with the panicked bellows of the cattle, creating a chaotic and brutal scene, like a hell on earth. Hey, Yuri, Netter William, and Silas, Shoodim, and the other cowboys fought bravely, protecting the cattle as if their very lives depended on it, as if they were their own flesh and blood. William rushed to shield the livestock. He had lost Tom in this way, and he swore he wouldn't lose anything else. He fired back fiercely, every bullet carrying his pain and rage. They were men of the West, accustomed to guns and uncompromising battles, each one a warrior. Red provided cover fire. Silas shielded. Jude protected the herd, each with their own task, forming a strong defense line. During the chaos of the ambush, Red Timilawam, with his booming voice and powerful build, became a whirlwind of action. He wasn't just firing, he was strategically moving, drawing fire away from the most vulnerable parts of the herd. At one point, a young, inexperienced cowboy, barely out of his teens, froze in terror as a rustler charged him. Red, Jorsiro, without a second thought, threw himself between them, taking a glancing blow to his arm but saving the boy's life. "Get back to the herd, kid friendly from one, Cernina," he roared, his face grim, before unleashing a volley of shots that sent the rustler scrambling. His arm throbbed, but he ignored the pain, his focus entirely on protecting the ranch's livelihood. Celestic One, usually quiet, transformed into a surprisingly effective strategist. He used his intimate knowledge of the canyon's terrain. Having explored every nook and cranny with his harmonica for years, he directed small groups of cattle through hidden crevices and narrow passes, guiding them away from the main ambush. At one point, he noticed a group of rustlers attempting to flank them from a rocky outcrop. He quickly signaled to Jude, using a series of specific bird calls they had developed for communication during hunts. Jude, understanding the signal, moved swiftly, positioning himself to cut off the rustlers' advance with a few well-aimed shots, forcing them to retreat. Jude Connolly, the silent guardian, moved like a shadow through the dust and smoke. His shots were precise, never wasted, always finding their mark. He wasn't just defending, he was actively disrupting the rustlers' formations, picking off their leaders and creating disarray. He saw Clara, exposed and vulnerable as she rushed to William's side, and without a word, he positioned himself between her and the remaining skirmishes, his body a silent shield. When the last rustler fled, Jude was the one who meticulously checked the perimeter, ensuring no hidden threats remained, his eyes missing nothing. When the gun smoke cleared, blood stained the ground, and scout corpses lay strewn amidst shattered rifle shells, evidence of the battle's ferocity and brutality. William, though he had fought his hardest, was wounded again, a deep gash on his shoulder, blood soaking his shirt, throbbing with pain. Her own shoulder still raw and bloody from the previous dust storm, didn't hesitate to rush to his side. Her face was etched with extreme worry. With nimble fingers and basic medical knowledge she'd learned from her mother, she stitched William's wound right there, as the sun climbed high and scattered gunshots still echoed. and the smell of gunpowder lingered in the air. Her hands trembled from exhaustion, pain, certain, and worry, but her will did not waver. Her eyes focused on his wound. Resolute, Mercer took him. A few townspeople witnessed the scene, whispering about the courage and humanity of this Texas girl. Their trust in Clara steadily grew. Unexpectedly, the conflict shifted from bullets to paperwork. A battle waged not with brute force but with intellect and cunning. Clara knew that Farnham land used not only violence, but also dirty tricks. Cunning schemes to illegally seize land, she decided she had to find evidence to expose their true nature. A risky and dangerous mission. On a moonless night, Clara broke into Farnham's ledger warehouse, a reckless but necessary act to save Mercer Ranch. She moved silently like a ghost, avoiding vigilant guards and hidden traps. She had to overcome a locked door cleverly hidden behind a stack of old sacks, and almost tripped over a sleeping guard dog. A surge of excitement and fear swelled within her, her heart pounding as if to burst from her chest. But her strong will helped her push through. In the faint light of an old oil lamp, casting strange shadows on the damp, moldy walls, she flipped through old ledgers, searching for clues, for evidence of bribery and fraud. Her fingers grazed over each line of text, each number, her amber eyes missing no detail. The smell of old paper and dust filled her nostrils. Finally, she found a small, worn leather-bound book, meticulously detailing the bribes paid to local officials in shadowy land deals. Irrefutable irregularities. It was irrefutable evidence. The key to toppling Farnham's empire. An unexpected ace in the hole. She secretly carried the ledger out, her heart still pounding in her chest. But now it was a beat of triumph, of liberation. At the Opera House, on Mercer-Cimarron, Dodge City's most luxurious building, now the scene of a tense, dramatic confrontation. William faced Farnham under the flickering yellow gaslights, casting hazy halos. The air in the room was thick with animosity and tension. All eyes fixed on the two men. Farnham, with a smug expression and disdainful eyes, believed he had victory in his grasp, that power and money would protect him. He even sneered at William, boasting about his manipulation of officials and the law. But he didn't know that Clara held the trump card, something that could overturn everything. As Farnham's Colt glinted, ready to finish William off, to strike a fatal blow, Clara acted unexpectedly. She slammed a sturdy wooden chair hard onto the floor, creating a loud, jarring noise that momentarily distracted Farnham. In that fleeting moment, William seized the opportunity, disarming him swiftly, simultaneously presenting the incriminating ledger Clara had given him earlier. The clack of handcuffs locking the greedy villain's wrists resonated dryly, sharply, signaling the end of a corrupt reign, of a wicked man. Justice was served, and honor was restored for Mercer Ranch amidst the resounding cheers of the witnessing townspeople and the fading gun smoke. They cheered not only for justice being served, but also because they were grateful to William and Clara for standing up to protect the interests of all, not just Mercer Ranch. Clara had proven that a woman's intellect and courage could be stronger than any gun, any conspiracy. She not only saved William, but also the future of Mercer Ranch, bringing justice to the oppressed and marginalized. The battle wasn't just William's, it was theirs, a testament to the power of collaboration, absolute trust, and the silent love that had blossomed. The cheers at the Opera House echoed ceaselessly, but the battle against Farnham's evil was not yet fully over. Although Farnham had been arrested, his cronies, Mercer-Cimarron, those he had once backed, were still out there, lurking in the shadows, awaiting their chance for revenge. Furthermore, his financial schemes had caused widespread damage, affecting the banking system and commercial activities. Mercer Ranch, despite winning the lawsuit, still faced an uncertain future, with large debts from legal fees and losses from previous attacks. The shadow of Plainsman Bank, a large financial institution closely linked to Farnham, still loomed, threatening to seize their assets at any moment. Clara, with her foresight, sensed the danger. She spent many sleepless nights poring over ledgers, dry numbers, trying to find a way out. The faint oil lamp on her desk barely illuminated the dizzying columns of figures. William, Tutu, knew that another battle, a life-and-death struggle on paper, was imminent. His eyes remained resolute, but sometimes revealed clear signs of exhaustion. The dark circles under his eyes grew deeper. Mercer Ranch was exhausted after endless battles. Just then, a miracle happened. The kindness William and Clara had sown in the early days now began to bear fruit. In an unexpected way, early one morning, a rapid, insistent knocking echoed at the door. William opened it to find old Gus standing there, his usually weathered face now firm and determined. "Boss," Gus said, his voice deep but heavy with resolve. "Me and the boys have talked it over. We ain't just hired hands. Mercer Ranch is our home, where we've poured our sweat and tears. We'll work for free for the next few months, until the ranch gets back on its feet. We can tough it out." William was stunned. He looked at Red, Silas with his harmonica, and Jude Connolly standing behind Gus, their eyes firm. Without a hint of hesitation, Silas even played a gentle tune on his harmonica, a melody that wasn't mournful as usual, but full of determination and hope. Like a quiet promise. "We can't let the bad guys win. Can't let them take what we've built," Red said, his voice gruff, his hands clenched, veins protruding. Jude simply nodded, his eyes resolute, his gun at his hip like a silent vow. William's heart warmed, a deep sense of gratitude swelling within him, as if a cool spring of water flowed through his soul. This wasn't just help, it was allegiance, loyalty, a true family bond forged through hardship. And that was just the beginning. A week later, as Clara was trying to recalculate the debts, her tired eyes scanning the daunting piles of numbers, an elderly woman, Mrs. Martha, the only baker in Dodge City, came to visit. Mrs. Martha's bakery always smelled of fresh bread and coffee, a familiar stop for everyone in town. She placed a basket full of fresh, fragrant bread and homemade jam on Clara's table, the aroma spreading throughout the small room. "Blake." "Mrs. Martha said, her voice warm and simple. "We know you're having a tough time. From now on, bread for your ranch will be sold at cost. And here, this money is from the townspeople's donations. They want to help, each giving a little, whether it's a worn dollar bill or a few silver coins." Clara looked at the small but meaningful amount of money in her hand, each coin representing the townspeople's heartfelt contribution. Tears welled up, her amber eyes sparkling with emotion. "But why?" she asked, her voice choked, unable to understand why such kindness would come at this moment. When she felt on the verge of collapsing, Martha smiled kindly, patting Clara's hand, her calloused but warm hand. "Don't you remember? Watch our Mercer-Cimarron. When our well ran dry after the dust storm, William let us take water for free from Mercer Ranch's well, saving so many families. And you opened a school for the children, regardless of whether they were rich or poor, giving them a chance to learn. My daughter, Mary, now knows how to read and write thanks to you. She even writes me letters now. And who dared to stand up to Farnham when he tried to seize Mr. Smith's family land, destroying their livelihood? It was the two of you. Kindness sown will blossom. Miss Blake, Martha's words were like a warm wave, washing away all of Clara's fatigue, worry, and loneliness. She realized that their acts of kindness, however small, had not been forgotten. They had taken deep root in the hearts of the people. And now, those seeds were sprouting into unwavering support, a strong, impenetrable wall that money could not buy. And it wasn't just Mrs. Martha. The tenant farmers, the small ranchers who had once been oppressed by Farnham land, now gathered. They brought heavy sacks of wheat, fragrant bundles of hay, plump chickens, and even a few newborn calves. They offered to lend money to William without interest, or to help with farm work on their days off, asking for nothing in return. "We may not have much money, but we have strength and gratitude, and those are the most precious things," said a tenant farmer named John, his calloused hand placed on William's shoulder, his eyes filled with sincerity. John, a man of few words but immense integrity, had a personal stake in this. His family had almost lost their small plot of land to Farnham's schemes, saved only by Clara's intervention at the Opera House. He remembered the fear in his wife's eyes, the hunger in his children's bellies. Now, he saw a chance to repay that kindness. He organized the other tenant farmers, rallying them with quiet determination. "Mercer Ranch is our shield," he'd tell them. "If it falls, we all fall." He even took it upon himself to mend fences on the ranch during his off days. His hands were though tired from his own farm, working tirelessly for the common good. Even the Pawnee people, whose children Clara had welcomed to her classroom and shared knowledge with, brought simple yet precious gifts, hand-woven warm blankets with intricate patterns, rare medicinal herbs that only they knew how to find and use, and blessings from the elders. Gray Wolf, the young chief with a calm face, came to meet William and Clara. "You have shown us respect. You have treated us as a part of this land." He said, his voice deep and warm, his profound eyes looking at them. "This land belongs to everyone. We will not let evil harm it, not let them divide us." Grey Wolf's words carried the weight of ancient wisdom and absolute trust. Like a promise from the mountains, from their ancestors, Grey Wolf, a leader who carried the weight of his people's history, saw more than just a ranch in Mercer's fight. He saw a shared struggle against external forces that sought to dominate the land and its inhabitants. He remembered the stories of his ancestors, of broken treaties and stolen lands. William and Clara, however, had shown a different path, a path of respect and cooperation. He often brought his daughter, Lily, to Clara's school, not just for her education, but as a symbol of the growing bond between their peoples. One evening, Grey Wolf invited William and Clara to a traditional Pawnee storytelling circle under the stars. He shared ancient legends of the land, of the spirits that resided within it, and of the importance of living in harmony with nature. This deepened William's understanding of the land he sought to protect. And Clara found echoes of her father's reverence for nature in Grey Wolf's words. Before this, minor conflicts between different groups, between white cowboys, immigrant tenants, and Native Americans had always existed. Murmurs of whispers and suspicious glances. But now, in the light of William and Clara's kindness and integrity, those barriers gradually dissolved, giving way to understanding. They realized that their common enemy was not their neighbors, different in skin color or language. But the greed, injustice, and malice of people like Farnham. William and Clara felt an extraordinary surge of strength. They were no longer fighting alone. They were part of a united community, a community built on trust and mutual support. Clara's late nights poring over ledgers no longer felt lonely. Whenever she looked up, she saw packages of food delivered, messages of encouragement, and she knew that dozens, hundreds of people stood behind them, ready to support them, giving her renewed strength. William, out on the ranch, met not just hired hands but friends, brothers, people willing to share the burden, no matter how small, transforming Mercer Ranch into a large family. One day, William received word that Plainsman Bank had officially issued a final notice of foreclosure on Mercer Ranch, setting a specific date for asset seizure. This news was a heavy blow, but William no longer felt as crushed as before. He gathered all the townspeople in the town square, where the historic battle had once taken place. He told them what was happening, about the imminent danger, hiding nothing, looking directly into their worried but determined eyes. "We fought for justice, for this land," William said, his voice echoing, full of emotion. "But now, in one term, we need all of your help. Plainsman Bank wants to swallow us whole, swallow everything we have built with blood and sweat. They want to take away the future of Mercer-Cimarron, to take away all of our homes." A heavy silence fell over the square. Then from the crowd, a voice rang out, firm and strong, "We won't let that happen." It was John, the tenant farmer, his face resolute, stepping forward. "We've seen what you two have done for us. Now it's our turn to repay you. We will stand with you. No one will be left behind." A wave of support spread like wildfire. Shopkeepers promised to postpone Mercer Ranch's debts. Farmers promised to bring extra grain and livestock to the ranch to provide them with temporary capital, asking for no repayment. Even the Dodge City sheriff, who had once hesitated due to pressure from powerful forces, now stood with them, resting his hand on the gun at his hip as a pledge. "I will ensure no one is allowed to cause trouble during the auction," he said, his voice firm, his eyes full of support and integrity. Clara, with her quick wit and intelligence, devised a daring plan, a strategy no one had anticipated. She knew there wouldn't be enough cash to pay off the enormous debt overnight, but she could use the strong community support to weaken the bank's power. She proposed that William and the local residents send a joint letter to major newspapers across the West and East, telling the story of Mercer Ranch, their tenacious fight against Farnham Land, and how Plainsman Bank was unfairly trying to foreclose, pushing honest people to the brink. She believed public opinion would be a more powerful weapon than any amount of money. The letters were sent, and indeed, the stories of William and Clara, of Mercer Ranch, of their kindness and the community's resistance, quickly spread across the West and even to large cities in the East. Newspapers ran extensive articles, exposing the injustice. People everywhere began to question Plainsman Bank's actions, their business ethics. Investors grew concerned about the bank's reputation, about the risks of associating with an institution condemned by the public. Pressure from the public and the media began to weigh heavily on Plainsman Bank, like a stone pressing on their chest, making them falter. Upon Plainsman Bank, unexpectedly met with such strong resistance and extraordinary community solidarity, began to waver. They did not want to face a long, costly legal battle and severe reputational damage in the public eye. Although some bad elements still tried to manipulate the situation, the voice of kindness and unity echoed louder than all, drowning out every conspiracy. That was when William and Clara realized they had not only won a battle, but had created a miracle woven from threads of kindness, sorrow, courage, and unshakable solidarity. This red dust land was not just a place that witnessed harshness, but also where human spirit was forged, becoming iron hard yet full of love and kindness. In the midst of the harsh winter, a cold northern air mass swept through, bringing fierce blizzards that transformed western Kansas into a white, cold, and deadly expanse. Life on Mercer Ranch became harder than ever. All activities halted, food supplies dwindled, and roads were buried under snow. But now, William and Clara were no longer alone. Although the bank still issued its final notice, a cold stamp on a white paper, they knew they had the entire community behind them. Clara, unwavering, knew she had to act immediately. With no time to think or hesitate, she rode Sundown, her loyal horse through the fierce blizzard. While William and the entire community watched from afar, their hearts full of worry, the wind howled like screaming demons. Snow flew blindingly, obscuring visibility, turning everything into an inescapable white. Each sharp snowflake pricked her face like a needle. The 20-mile journey to Safford, the nearest town with a bank, was a true fight for survival. Her lips cracked and bled from the cold. Every muscle in her body felt frozen, numb, but her will did not falter. It grew even stronger, more resolute. She knew that the fate of Mercer Ranch, of William and discern, and of all those who had trusted her, lay in her hands. She could not fail. The images of hopeful faces of children, Penoranum, tenants, and even William Bessurance remained vivid in her mind, an inexhaustible source of motivation. The journey to Safford was a harrowing ordeal. Sundown, a sturdy horse, deer, struggled against the relentless wind and deep snowdrifts. Clara, bundled in thick furs, could barely see the path ahead. At one point, a sudden gust of wind nearly unseated her, and Sundown stumbled, sinking deep into a snowdrift. Clara, with numb fingers, had to dismount and physically pull the horse free, her breath coming in ragged gasps. She remembered her father's lessons about navigating by the stars, even through a veil of clouds, and she focused on the faint glimmer of the North Star whenever the blizzard momentarily thinned. Her mind raced, replaying conversations with William, the faces of the children in her school, the unwavering support of the townspeople. This wasn't just for her, it was for all of them. The sheer will to protect what they had built fueled her every painful step. When she finally reached the bank, after all efforts to overcome death, Clara placed her mark on the bright red deed, executing a complex financial transaction to save the ranch. Sitting in the cold bank room, facing the scrutinizing eyes of the employees, she felt exhaustion wash over her. But thanks to public pressure and the bank's diminishing reputation, along with the evidence Clara had previously collected, Plainsman Bank was forced to concede. They couldn't foreclose so brazenly when they were being watched by the entire community and the press. Clara used all of her meager savings, and even had to borrow more from old family friends to gather enough money to pay a significant portion of the debt, enough for the bank to retract its foreclosure decision. It was a great sacrifice, an act of courage, of unconditional love and boundless dedication to Mercer Ranch. To the people there, Jude Connolly, who had been following Clara from a distance to ensure her safety, found her on her way back, exhausted and almost collapsed in the gradually subsiding blizzard. He carried her back to the ranch. Clara was spent, her body cold and trembling uncontrollably. William, with an expression of extreme worry, could not hide his terror when he saw her lying motionless in Jude's arms, her skin as pale as paper. He rushed to carry her inside, placing a storm lantern beside her bed, praying for a drop of warm water to save her life, for warmth to return to her body. He sat by her all night, tending to her every need, adding blankets, wiping sweat from her forehead, feeling her fragility and realizing that she had sacrificed everything for their ranch. For him, he remembered his dry, practical offer from that first day. In that moment, all barriers between them completely crumbled. Their unspoken love, unconstrained by contract, blossomed and ignited in their hearts, warming the cold room and their very souls, bringing a warmth greater than any fire. When the snow melted, small streams gurgled through the hillsides, carrying the breath of spring. Mercer Ranch awakened, like a living creature emerging from a long winter slumber, stretching to greet the sun. Tender green shoots emerged from the earth, signaling the return of spring and a promising new beginning. The ranch bell chimed clearly, its sound echoing across the valley, inviting everyone to a brighter future, a new life. The pine-roofed schoolhouse, once just a lone blackboard in the field, was now a cozy, sturdy small school, welcoming new students with radiant faces and curious eyes, eager for knowledge. William, with an emotional expression and a choked voice, his eyes glistening as he looked towards the horizon, delivered a speech to the entire community. To those who had endured so many ups and downs with him, the Kansas land feeds the grass feeds the cattle feed us, and the written word feeds dreams, he said, every word resonating in the air, touching the hearts of each person, etching itself into their minds. It was a declaration of resilience, of the importance of knowledge, and of unshakable faith in the future of the West. In the Trinity's dreaming moon, green grass burst forth with new shoots, and the ranch erected a free water sign as an open invitation, a symbol of Mercer Ranch's generosity and humanity, a source of life not just material but spiritual. With Crittertown's spur, the new Cimarron Railway branch, Mercer Ranch expanded its influence, connecting to the outside world. The familiar train whistle now carried the sound of prosperity. Trains laden with cattle, cheese, and the Dust Veil-voiced newspaper spread throughout the region, bringing fame and prosperity. It was a big step, an affirmation of their position on the map of the West. Then in 1891, when Rocky Mountain locusts descended thick as black clouds, threatening to destroy crops, the Mercers displayed extraordinary adaptability and innovation. Clara, with her knowledge, suggested switching to drought-resistant sorghum, a crop that could withstand Kansas's harsh conditions, turning the fields a faint purplish red in the twilight, a breathtaking sight, a symbol of life and hope. Later, Tom's Crossing Bridge, named after William's deceased brother, was built. The bridge not only connected the two banks of the river, but also became a symbol of healing and hope, of overcoming past pain to look toward the future. Gray Wolf and the Pawnee tribe, the indigenous people of this land, came for a cultural exchange bonfire, the rhythmic drumming of hawkskin drums echoing across the valley, mingling with traditional dances and songs, reverberating under the starry sky. It was a moment of unity, of mutual respect, and of building a multicultural community where everyone could live in harmony. The ensuing years passed, bringing continuous development to Mercer-Cimarron. William and Clara were not just ranch owners, but architects of a community. Beloved and respected leaders, they had more children, little angels who brought joy and ringing laughter, living proof of a love that had weathered so many storms and trials. Emily, their first daughter, with her chestnut hair inherited from her mother and her father's gray-blue eyes, was the embodiment of Mercer-Cimarron, a blend of two bloodlines, two souls, a hope for a new generation. Whenever William looked at Emily, he saw the image of Tom, his brother, present in every gesture, every smile of the little girl. But now it was no longer a sharp pain but a comfort, a continuation, The pain of losing Tom never completely disappeared. It was like a deep scar in his heart, a reminder of life's fragility. But now, that scar was no longer a haunting obsession. It was a part of him, a part of the story of resilience and gratitude. Clara, with her gentleness and understanding, helped him face that pain, transforming it into motivation to build a better future for generations to come. She often stood with him by Tom's crossing bridge, silently holding his hand, watching the swift water flow, feeling an unusual sense of peace. Clara continuously learned and innovated. She introduced new farming techniques, helping the ranch better withstand droughts and unusual epidemics. She encouraged education not only for children, but also for adults, organizing evening reading and discussion sessions at the school, where the oil lamps illuminated focused faces. Under her leadership, the Mercer-Cimarron Library became a treasure trove of knowledge, where everyone could find books on agriculture, history, and even literature, stories of the outside world. She believed that knowledge was the key to escaping poverty and backwardness, a solid foundation for a sustainable future. William, 31 as Furnawarn, with Clara's support, became an unofficial political leader of the region. He participated in council meetings, advocating for the rights of small farmers and ranchers, fighting against the oppression of large corporations. His deep, resonant voice, full of persuasion and sincerity, earned everyone's trust. He and Clara, together, built a strong network among neighboring ranches, forming a powerful alliance to resist external threats, turning Dodge City into a center of justice and unity. Occasionally, memories of the conflict with Farnham land would resurface, like a passing dark cloud, but they no longer feared them. They were merely reminders of what they had overcome, of the inner strength they had discovered in the most difficult times. Jude Connolly, Red Depper Maywick and Silas remained loyal companions, brothers who had faced life and death with them. They often gathered around the fireplace, recounting stories of past battles, of dangers faced, and of shared laughter. Their cheerful laughter dispelling the shadows of the past. Silas's harmonica still played, but now it was no longer mournful, but carried the tones of peace and happiness, of a life that had found its meaning. Time passed, new footprints etched onto the old land, and Mercer-Cimarron continued to thrive. New houses sprang up, roads were widened, and endless fields of wheat and sorghum stretched golden under the sun, like vast carpets. The water from the twin wells was utilized more efficiently than ever, providing enough for both town and ranch. Irrigation systems were improved, allowing crops to flourish even in the driest seasons, transforming the barren land into an oasis of life. Emily, William and Clara's daughter, Mercer-Cimarron, grew up with a love for the land and a passion for learning. She was taught not only numbers and letters, but also instilled with the spirit of resilience, compassion, encouraged by her parents. She often accompanied Clara to the school, helping her mother teach, and was not afraid to join William in the fields, learning how to care for livestock and understand each type of soil. Emily was the embodiment of the future generation, a generation that would continue to build and protect the legacy of Mercer Ranch, carrying the flame of hope and innovation. William and Clara, though age had etched wrinkles around their eyes and silvered their hair, their love and respect for each other never faded. They often sat on the porch each evening, watching the brilliant sunset stain the Kansas sky red, their old hands clasped tightly. They didn't need many words, a glance. A squeeze of the hand was enough to understand each other fully, to understand the sacrifices and happiness they had shared. Their love was not a sudden, passionate romance, but a love built on a foundation of trust, sacrifice, understanding, and unwavering commitment through countless trials. And the red dust of western Kansas still swirled. But now, every grain of dust carried a story. It was no longer a story of pain and loss, but a story of life, of love, of resilience, and of dreams that had become reality. Dreams nurtured from those very dust particles. Mercer-Cimarron, under William and Clara's guardianship, had become a legend, an enduring symbol of the Wild West. By Independence Day in 1900, the town was officially renamed Mercer-Cimarron, a name signifying the union of the Mercer family's legacy and the beauty of the Cimarron River. It was an unprecedented celebration. The town held a triumphant parade with jubilant crowds, the lively sound of Yankee Doodle playing from a Willie band echoing everywhere. and paper fireworks bursting around the twin wells, creating a dazzling, colorful spectacle, sparkling under the bright summer sun. It was a symbol of prosperity, happiness, and unity. Emily, now a lively girl, ran and played among the crowds, her face radiant with joy, her eyes bright as she looked at the world around her. My story begins with the red dust. Shy, she cheered, her voice clear as a bell, ringing out amidst the shouts of celebration. It wasn't just a child's remark, it was a declaration of legacy, of origin, Mercer-Cimarron, of the pride of a new generation, of a bright future built from a harsh past. The tune of Home on the Range filled the air, a familiar, emotional melody, as buffalo grass bowed gently, as if whispering that this was home, the place where dreams were nurtured and came true, where everyone found peace and happiness. In 1905, as the pure white yucca blossoms burst forth, blanketing the rugged hillsides, creating a breathtaking scene like a vast white carpet under the sun, William Mercer and Clara stood on Clayton's Mound where their chance encounter began, where they first laid eyes on each other under that crimson sunset years ago. Together, they cast a new stone marker. Free water, one is certain win, for ride safe. The sign was not just an invitation, but also a symbol of the generosity, resilience, and vision they had built for the entire region. A reminder of the values they had upheld, the twin stone wells alongside the Cimarron River, the abundant water they had fought to find, were now the heart of the town, the lifeblood of Mercer-Cimarron, flowing ceaselessly, nourishing all life. The red-tiled schoolhouse, once a simple blackboard in the field, had become a symbol of knowledge in the future, echoing with the sounds of children spelling words, bright laughter, and the rustle of pencils on paper, the creaking of windmill blades turning steadily, blending with the whoosh of trains rushing past Crittertown Spur, the bellowing of cattle from lush green pastures, and the promise of the land still beckoning. Bring new stories here, for the red dust to tell forever. William and Clara held hands tightly, looking towards the horizon, where the sun was setting, painting the sky with streaks of orange and purple, more vibrant than even in the early days. Golden sunlight stretched across the lush green fields, across the growing houses, across the happy faces of the townspeople, every eye shining with hope. They had built not just a ranch, but an empire of hope, a living testament to the power of human love and will. And their love, initially a contract, had deepened into a profound, sincere love, overcoming all boundaries and prejudices, becoming a legendary tale. They had found happiness in giving, in sacrificing, and in building a better future for generations to come. And the red dust of western Kansas still swirled. But now, every grain of dust carried a story. It was no longer a story of pain and loss, but a story of life, of love, of resilience, and of dreams that had become reality. Dreams nurtured from those very dust particles. Mercer-Cimarron, under William and Clara's guardianship, had become a legend, an enduring symbol of the Wild West.